as is Keynes later on, what banks ought to be able to do is to assess those investment projects and check whether the innovations which are at stake are any good ones, whether they yield an additional income or not. Which means you must have bankers that are competent with regard to such enterprises, investment, and they must have a long-term perspective, because those investments, innovations, they can only be carried out over long periods of time. Now the problem of the banking system today with its short-term orientation is they have no longer as much as they used to have that capacity. You see, expertise, knowledge about real investment, and secondly, long-term orientation. That is a major problem, I think, we are forced with, and I think Schumpeter already was very clear about it. The risk is borne by the bank and not the entrepreneur. Now, Schumpeter also argued that interest is a deduction from profits. Of course, it's a kind of tribute to monopoly price, if you wish. You have to pay to those who have the funds. And his profits actually are nothing but the extra profits of the classical economists. Those of you who have ever studied the classical economists will know this. And what is important then in Schumpeter is how the drama unfolds. He speaks of a drama. There's a first stage of the drama when something new is introduced into the economy. An invention has been made, but does it stand the test of the market? If it stands the test of the market, it will become an innovation. But if it will become an innovation, you see, it changes the entire system. If it is, for example, an innovation into a method of production that allows to reduce unit costs, then sooner rather than later the price of the product will tend to fall. But if the price of the product tends to fall in competitive conditions, then of course those using the old method are getting into trouble. They're still having the old unit costs, but they're having smaller prices, therefore their profitability is vanishing. But if profitability vanishes, they cannot escape either innovating themselves or imitating. They will be driven out of the market, and that is of course the second act of the drama. Trying to escape total annihilation, others must follow suit. You see, you're forced to act. It is not a question of your willingness. You're forced to act if you want to stay in business. That's important. Therefore, the process is very much a forced process, according to Schumpeter. The drama resounds with the cries of the crushed, over which the wheels of the new go. It's a beautiful sentence, I think, and it is true. This is what is happening all the time. Now, I don't want to spend too much time on Schumpeter. Let me switch to Strasser and Keynes. I have got altogether 40 minutes. We started 20 past, so I have been able to calculate, despite headache and jet lag and altitude. I have still a little time. So let me talk about Strasser and Keynes. Because you see, there was a criticism alluded to as regards mainstream, neoclassical, marginalist economics. But why and what can be said alternatively? So what is the role of Keynes in modern times? I'm not arguing that it is all in Keynes, of course not. I mean, Keynes is an important book, The General Theory of Employment, Interest and Money, but of course it has its deficiencies, no doubt. I'm also not arguing it's all in Kalecki, I'm not arguing it's all in Strasser, but certain ideas, particularly certain criticisms, are of the utmost importance to understand what is going on. And these authors still have messages, I think, which ought to be absorbed by people interested in understanding what is going on in this world, and not just looking for a career and trying to get as close as possible to those who rule the roots in economic faculties nowadays. I think you understand the message, right? Now, the first thing is, what is mainstream all about, if you want to put it into a nutshell? It consists, I think, essentially of two propositions or main pillars. The first one concerns the volume of output as a whole. and employment. What determines total output and total employment in the economic system? And the argument there is, if markets are left free to operate, then Say's law holds. So all markets will be clear. And in much of modern economic literature you find that as an assumption right from the beginning. In much of Lucas's work it's just assumed the markets are clearing all the time. That's the first pillar. So it's about the size of the product and employment. And the second pillar is of course about the distribution of what is being produced. Who gets what and why? And the distribution of the product is basically marginal productivity theory. People get what they incrementally add to the product. Now if you apply that to the bony of bankers whose firms ran down, or firms that were bankrupt and got huge bony, then you see immediately there's perhaps a problem of explanation. Marginal productivity theory cannot easily be applied to many of the things we observe in this work. Now, what I want to point out is, Keynes criticized first and foremost Say's law. He thought that the economic system is not persistently creating a situation of full employment and full capacity output. That is his main message. And Sartre's main message is marginal productivity doesn't help. Now, of course, the two are closely connected, because if you have a system which does not generate full employment, how could you apply marginal productivity theory? Doesn't make sense. If a system consistently generates less than full employment, marginal productivity theory cannot be applied. It presupposes that you get all your factors fully utilized. So the analysis of Keynes and Sartre are complementary in some way, which does not mean that it's easy to combine them. But they're complementary because they attack the two pillars at hand. Now, let me briefly talk about Sartre. It has been mentioned that I'm engaged in editing his unpublished papers and correspondence. It is coming out, hopefully, before long, with Cambridge University Press in 3 volumes, about 2,000 pages. I must point out at this stage that to my great regret and sorrow and sadness, my colleague Pierangelo Garignani, who was a close student of Sartre, died just a few weeks ago, very unexpectedly, and so the task is now, it seems, entirely upon my shoulders. I try to do my best to accomplish the task. Now, it's a constructive task for Sartre. I mean, first of all, he was able to show that you could determine the major magnitudes one is interested in within a classical approach to value and distribution. Now, I can't go into details, I would love to, but I have to presuppose that you know some of it. That is, the general rate of profits and relative prices. And they are determined essentially in terms of a given system of production actually in use, and how the distribution problem is solved. What is the share of wages and what is the real wage rate? With these data you can determine the rate of profits and relative prices, relative normal prices, reflecting costs of production and the particular distribution in the system under consideration. The critical task of Sartre was to show that too, remember, marginal productivity theory cannot be sustained. And if you show that, if you're able to show that it even has negative implications for one, that is important to see. You see, they're not disconnected, they're connected. Now, I have to rush through this. I know that you might not easily understand what I'm saying. The argument is complicated, but you see, you did not come here in the hope and expectation that this guy from Austria is explaining the world to you in 40 minutes. Or did you? If you did, you're just fools. But you are not fools, as I see from your eyes, splendid eyes, bright, etc., etc. Right, so it needs some work. When you go out of this classroom, you might wish to work, you might read to read certain books, etc., in order to learn more about what is there to be said. Now, the first thing is the role of counterfactuals and alternative theories. Counterfactuals, meaning to to consider a situation which is not the one I'm concerned with, but from which I believe I can learn in order to understand what is actually happening. Now, in classical economics, you do not have counterfactuals of the sort you have in neoclassical economics. In neoclassical economics, as you know, it all is related to concepts such as the marginal productivity of capital.